Hi, good morning. This is Kelly Renz with the Novo Group. Hopefully everyone can hear me just fine on the phone. We've got quite a group of attendees here, so we're very excited to get started today. This is a second in a series of 4 webinars that Novo is hosting with key partner organizations with the theme surrounding all things about candidate experience, candidate engagement, and overall attraction of talent to our organizations. We're very excited to bring this information to you today. So again, our partner today is Stellarus, and you'll be hearing from their leader in just a little bit. We'll get some good nuggets of information for you as we go through this. But as a takeaway, I just want a couple of logistics before we get started. First, on the flyout menu for the GoToWebinar, there is a question section that we will monitor throughout the presentation and most likely take most of the questions at the end just so we can make sure we get all this great material out to you today. There is also a section for handouts that you'll see on that flyout menu, and there are 4 different handouts. One is a slide deck, which is the deck we'll be reviewing together, as well as a little more information about both our organizations, both Novo and Stellarus, so that you have a little more context of what our organizations do and what we provide in the marketplace. So feel free to collect those now and before the end of the presentation. Once I end the presentation, those would not be accessible online any longer. So they're yours free for the taking, so please enjoy. So as we get started, just by way of introduction, again, my name is Kelly Renz, and I'm the president and CEO of the Novo Group, based here out of Wisconsin, but with offices in Chicago and servicing clients all over the United States. My life before Novo, though, was primarily in the human capital leadership space. I also held roles as Chief Administration Officer within several organizations, and as you can see listed here, while probably a good solid 15 of those years were rooted in the tech sector, I've been across multiple industries, from information management to RPO and all the way through professional services. So over the years of with that experience, one of the things that has just continued to be of more visible importance is the fact that our employer brands and our employer value proposition in the marketplace matter more now than ever. The talent market is heating up. We're going to see a little bit of statistics about what's going to be facing all of us if we're not feeling it already. It's going to get harder before it gets easier. And we want to give you some tools today and some things to think about as you look at your benefits program as a differentiator. All too often we take benefits for granted as just a standard part of what we offer employees. And instead, today we're going to actually challenge you to think about that a little differently, about different ways you can engage your workforce and attract talent to your organization, leveraging some new information about the attitudes of benefits and insurance overall in our programs. So why don't we go ahead and get started. So let's talk about the business case first and foremost. Like, I probably need to harp on the fact that we need a business case to attract talent, but the competition is heating up. We're actually entering one of the most unprecedented markets with the lowest unemployment rates in almost 60 years. So most of us on this call will have not ever seen lower unemployment in our entire career, and it's not going to get necessarily easier. Some of the things we're seeing in studies is, for example, that employers, here's a great statistic, 40% say they're having difficulty retaining critical skill employees. We're seeing that as recruiters in the marketplace, that we are now back into an environment where candidates are getting multiple offers. They have choices, and we need to be able to differentiate ourselves in that. And how about 5 and 10? So 50% of HR managers say they have open positions for which they cannot find qualified candidates. So we're really starting to have to be more creative in how we identify core competencies for roles, and then understanding how we're going to attract those individuals to our organizations. Here's another view. This is one that always makes me kind of pause for a second and think about what we are dealing with. If you look at this, this is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this really shows the net change in the working age population, really that available talent pool, as we forecast out through 2050. So So if you take a look at the bottom, we're at 2017, and I hate to say this, but the worst hasn't hit yet. We got a ways to go, and we don't start to see really any significant improvements till 2035 and a little bit before that. So we're going to be hitting the talent crunch even harder than we do right now. But the gray line that's at the top is the average job creation. So that's relatively steady. You wouldn't think that from reading politics and news and everything, but job creation has been a relatively steady marker. And that gap that you see in the middle there is what we're talking about, how you'll fill that with some of the differentiation of your employer brand. So before I turn this over to Christy in just a couple minutes, I want to share a little bit about some of the changes in the demands of the marketplace. It is definitely something very different and unprecedented. So one of the things we are enjoying is the amount of data we get out of the marketplace about what candidates are looking for. And I love this slide as we think about having multiple generations in the workplace. What is on their mind when it comes to concerns around talent, around their ability to find jobs, and what's important for them to get out of organizations? So I like looking at the left here. So in the first 5 years of careers, and this would be our millennials today, and guess what's right on their heels? We've got Generation Z already entering the workplace. So if you haven't figured out the millennials, we're adding one more to your plate already. But here's some of the things that your employees are thinking about. They worry more about paying the bills if they're in their first 5 years than they do insurance. Look at what your near retirees are looking at. So these would be the people in the 55 and older rankings, because we are now starting to see more people go back to a little bit earlier retirement schedule, because post-recession we've seen some obvious improvements in 401ks, making it possible for them to retire a little earlier, but they're looking at things like adequate health insurance, comfortable retirement. So if you have a one-size-fits-all benefits program and approach to that solution, somebody may be left out. And knowing what's on the minds and in the hearts of your employees is also translatable to what's in the hearts and minds of your candidates. So without a doubt, there's some real opportunity here, and we know that there's some growth that we can do to meet the needs as best we can. And even for those of you that might be small organizations where you struggle and say, you know, this might be great to have a lot of flexibility if you're a large employer, but what can I do? I really only have the ability to manage and implement so much. We're going to give you some of those differentiators through the presentation to think about that are sometimes low cost but high value options. Here's another view, specifically talking about millennials, and probably statistically significant is the fact that as you look ahead at the workforce, millennials will make up about 50% of the workforce that is employed in about 5 years. So these are the things that are on their mind, and Christy's going to take you a little deeper into this. I can't wait for her to share the information she has with you. But the things that they put as priority, the things on their mind, are not necessarily traditional insurance, but these are the things that are considered benefits. So when we talk about insurance, that's a very specific component of a package. Benefits are all of these other things that may be tangible or intangible differentiators that help your organization stand apart. Training and development, by far, number one. It's the what's in it for me, what do I get out of my time with you, how are you investing in me? And then the flexible working hours, that's nothing new. We knew that going into this generation that was going to be important. And then you can see we move into some financial items, and then healthcare and 401k. Studies show that the millennial generation, because of the different education and access they have to financial information growing up and through school, are more financially savvy about their retirement planning than other generations. So we're going to start seeing that creep up in the importance as well. And then here's just some other great views of things that are important. I love the company car component. We're not quite there yet on offering that to our organization. But with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Christy. One of the things I want to just say as I pass this to her is I've had the pleasure of knowing Christy for over a decade now, and we've worked together. She's when I was the head of HR in an organization, she was also our broker and provider. A fantastic organization, an expert in the field, and the very first person I always call if I have a question regarding benefits programs in a much bigger sense. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Christy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi. It's great to be here with Kelly today and do a joint presentation together. I know some of you who are on the call. We've worked together, and we work together currently or in past lives. And just a little bit about me. I am the president of Stellarus Benefits. And Stellarus itself is one of those organizations, at least from the Business Journal perspective. We're one of the top 25 benefits organizations in the state of Wisconsin. That being said, we're small enough to be hands-on, and we're large enough to have leverage with all of the key carriers. So that's just a little bit about us before I get into the presentation. I always like to look at a variety of sources for expertise. And so these are some of the organizations that I did my research on, pulling this information together. And there's certainly a plethora of information out there, but I felt that these are some really solid background pieces for us to take a look at today. So as we said, the title is It's Not Just Insurance Anymore, and I actually have a card at home that says chocolate, it's not just for breakfast anymore. That's how I like to live my life, but really employers today are they're balancing needs, wants, and interests of a diverse workforce. But bottom line, in my view, it's all about simplifying my life. And what can an employer do today to help simplify the life and provide options and resources to their employees? So we're going to be taking a look at some of those things, both insurance and non-insurance, some trends and patterns, and evolving patterns, all with an eye toward creating a community within your company, and along with that, some empathy perhaps within your company as well. So just so that we're all on the same page, this is the current breakdown of the difference between matures, baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials, all based on when they were born. But I also found it interesting, a couple things from Hub International, is the matures are not ready to retire. The baby boomers is keep everything the same. Gen Xers want let me do it my way. And as Kelly already mentioned, millennials are worried about their finances, financially astute, tend to be somewhat more financially astute, and they're a little bit concerned about that. But at this point, Gen Xers, millennials make up about the same percentage of the workforce. And they bring different things to the market. They bring different things to the employer. You've got, with matures, the leadership and experience and respect of their employees. Baby boomers are typically going to be quite vocal. They're more than happy to spend time at the office, stay late. They understand the value of that hard work, probably from their own parents. Gen Xers, very independent, like lots of autonomy and work-life balance, because typically they're the folks who have, more often than not, the young children at home, and that's very important to them. And then we have millennials who like lots of feedback. They want to know how they're doing. They do like to work hard, but they also like that work-life balance, so typically are not so much interested in putting in extra time after hours. So in my perspective, you don't have to go Silicon Valley to offer a wide range of benefits. My favorite most recently, we've all heard about the ping pong tables in the office, free beer on Fridays, but I thought that electronic bulb was quite interesting. I think you have to make sure you've got good liability coverage for that. There are some companies that have a weekly lottery drawing for different prizes, but the one that I found most interesting is in the upper right. There are now work hammocks in some organizations, or then having to sit at either an ergonomically correct desk or at a high desk that you actually are sitting in a hammock while you're doing your work. And so there are some work hammocks that are being made available probably on Etsy even as we're talking. So to talk about, from a study done by Fast Company, a very entrepreneurial magazine, and very, very leading edge in terms of some of the surveys that they do, the top 5 benefits ranked by employees. 40% of employees said their number 1 preference was on healthcare insurance, and that's not surprising across generations, followed by paid time off, performance bonuses, sick days, and then 401k. So those typically, again, fairly traditional, but yet that's still the core or the foundation that individuals, regardless of their generation, are actually looking for. So when it comes, though, when we break that down a little bit further, and again, this is from Hub International, the matures want a choice. And they can afford a high deductible health plan. They like the fact that they can put dollars, HSA accounts where they can put dollars in that and use those dollars towards retirement as well, too, for healthcare expenses post-retirement. They do like ID theft protection, and they're looking at permanent life and potentially critical illness. For baby boomers, they also like choice. They can also afford the high deductible health plans, and they like HSAs. They're typically adopters of HSA plans and putting money aside. They find it important. Disability insurance, they understand and maybe have even experienced themselves. A coworker or a family member who's experienced a short or a long-term disability and understand the financial impact of the family when that occurs. From a voluntary perspective, and voluntary here we're using the definition where it's offered on a group basis by the employer, so it provides for group rates, lower rates than what you'd be able to buy on your own, but the employer has done all of the research and offers that to their employees. So they like the term life options, also critical illness. ID theft seems to be sort of the common theme across the board, and they're also typically interested in long-term care insurance as well. Because, again, they may have been part of that. They are typically part of the sandwich generation where they're taking care of their parents and maybe children simultaneously. Then we've got the Gen Xers. They want choice, tend to choose PPO, traditional plans. More often than not, it's because they like plans that have office visit co-pays so that they have a low cost associated with the health benefit rather than paying the full cost under an HSA or a high deductible health plan. Their life insurance is important to them because they need to protect their children. They need disability benefits, long or short-term or short-term disability benefits, but they need to understand it to understand the value of that benefit. And again, here from voluntary, it's critical illness accident because they've got children who are tend to be very athletic, sports-oriented, and potentially accident-prone. 529 plans so that they can begin preparing for their own children's educational needs. And then home and auto are of interest to Generation Xers at the business level as well, too. And then millennials. The reason why they like high deductible health plans is because they are often less expensive, just like an HMO. So they're driven somewhat by the cost rather than the ability to put dollars aside into the HSA bank account. Because they typically don't have a relationship with the dentist, they're okay with a dental HMO, so that's something that's okay with them. And for them, they have a somewhat longer list of voluntary interests that they have, depending upon their specific needs. Home and auto, employee purchasing with financial wellness, student loan repayment. I'm reading more and more articles about student loan repayment. Very small percent of employers, I think it's less than 4% today, that are offering some sort of support in that area, but it is of concern to millennials, many of whom who have tens of thousands of dollars in debt. So I think you're going to see a much greater emergence around programs for employers to help their employees in that way in some form or another. And then accident, often bundled with identity theft protection. They're very likely to understand the whole concept of hacking into and the detriment it can cause to them if that occurs. So I thought this slide, and this is from the from Ebury, and in conjunction with Greenwald, and they are an employee benefit research institute on a national basis. Actually, who's more engaged? And if you take a quick glance at this, the light blue is millennials. They're more engaged than any other segment of the three segments that are noted here than any of the others, in some ways by quite a long shot as well, too. And we're talking about as they make their decisions and how they gather their information. They talk to professionals, they will go online, they talk to their family and their colleagues, they visit websites. They are interested in being educated about their decisions. The difference between Generation X and baby boomers is fairly minimal. They sort of slide back and forth in terms of, what they're more likely. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, it's not obvious, but it's not unusual to think that Gen X might use the technology sources for information, maybe slightly more than a baby boomer might. But it's just interesting. I thought this was an interesting slide to see and understand and to give credit to the millennials, because they do want to understand what they're actually purchasing. This is a MetLife study, and very current, just actually introduced. And here again, employers, they want to offer insurance protections that they believe their employees need, and again, very diverse population within their most organizations today, even if the company doesn't pay for them. So again, here we're looking at the MetLife study, and as I'm sure you're familiar, any study that's done or survey that is done, you may sometimes see conflicting information. Depends upon who's answered the questions. But here again, we see medical and pharmacy and 401k at the very top, and then followed by auto insurance, which is actually higher than I would have expected on in terms of at an employer level, and dental and homeowners insurance as well too. So you can see how that stacks up. Identity theft is certainly on there at about not quite 20%, and legal services at least at the bottom of this list at this point. So this slide is also from the Employee Benefit Research Institute, and there are two pieces to this slide. It's about the take-up or the election or the enrollment rate of workplace benefits. So the first, on the left side, is in terms of among all employees, regardless of whether their employer has offered the benefit or not. And then the right-hand side is for those employees whose employers offered the benefit. So actually, I feel like the right-hand side is probably more valuable. So again, this is assuming that it's being offered by the employer. It shows the trend over the last 3 years, and so you can see where things are increasing. Again, at the very top, as we've seen before, what we would normally expect: health, retirement, dental, vision, life insurance. I sort of draw the line underneath traditional pension or defined benefit. That's at 71%. 71% of employees who are offered that benefit actually enroll or take advantage of that. Beneath that, we see the percentages are lower than 50%. So again, you can see how things may have changed a little bit. Sometimes the percentage has stayed steady over the last 3 years, and sometimes it's actually increased. But I thought this slide, and again, as Kelly mentioned earlier, you can download these slides as long as you download them before the session is over. And if you were interested and if you wanted to send me an email, I'd be happy to send you my slides, even if you aren't able to click that button fast enough before the session ends today. So from an ancillary benefits perspective, and again, most of this we're still talking about insurance, but I thought this information, this is from Pricewaterhouse, I'm sorry, I take that back. This is still Employee Benefits Research Institute. Here we're talking about who pays for the benefit. Ancillary benefits we tend to think are primarily voluntary, but what you'll see here, the way to look at this slide is this is the percentage of employers who are offering the benefit, anywhere from dental at 99% of employers offer it, down to personal excess liability insurance that might supplement your homeowners at 11%. The second column is about where it's 100% employer paid. And the highlighted fields are those where it is most frequently. So life insurance, accidental death and dismemberment tied to that, long and short-term disability, as well as business travel accident. Those are the ones that have the highest percent, where the employer typically is paying 100% of the cost. Then employer subsidized obviously means that the contribution is split between the employer and employee, and that's where we see dental primarily falling there. And then on the far right side, voluntary meaning 100% employee paid, offered as a benefit to the entire organization, researched vetted by the employer, but still the employee picking up the majority of the cost, and that's where you see the vast majority of the benefits on the bottom right side. Anything from vision, we rarely see vision paid for or in any form by the employer. That's where auto, identity theft, long-term care, homeowners, etc. Pet insurance falls under that as well too. So something that, again, thought would be valuable to you to see, again, what other people are doing, what other organizations are doing. And as you build and modify the benefits that you offer and think about offering to your employees. So this slide is also, again, from eBree. And here they're looking at it from an employee perspective, what they consider the advantages and disadvantages of offering those voluntary benefits. The number one being that it's probably going to cost you less than if you're going out and purchasing it on your own. They like the flexibility of being able to choose which benefits they want to purchase, and the fact that they're able to take those benefits, oftentimes take those benefits with them if they left their employer. They also like the fact that it's taken out of their payroll, so they don't have to write a separate check. It makes it simple for them. It makes it easier for them. And then further down, that the employer's choosing, it's kind of neutral on that for the most part. The fact that the employer, I think they rely on their employer to do the due diligence, and they're not necessarily expecting their employer to pay the full cost of that. So as we mentioned before, simplicity, work-life balance is really the key. It's not just, I think it's been made more visible or talked about more because of the millennials, and we can all thank them for that, because that's who they are, and they make the rest of us step back sometimes and say, you know what, I need to have a little more balance in my life as well too. And so I think that's one of the gifts that they have actually given to us. And so here we're going to talk about, again, the 4 different generations. What do they want, and how do they like to be communicated with? So matures. And I'll read it to you, but and add a little, maybe some little color commentary. But matures, it's important to them. They want to remain as healthy as possible. And you know what? They like working. They want to be productive while they're at work. And they want to continue to be looked up to as well. And they want to be able to also retire in comfort. They don't want to have necessarily a frugal retirement. Boomers, they need to provide for their family. They also want to retire in comfort as well too. So that's high on the mind of those first older generations. Gen Xers, they're still looking, if they haven't bought a home, that's important to them, and they need to support their families. They are also that sandwich generation where they've got both their parents who are aging as well as their children, and they're balancing the needs of those. Oftentimes have their children maybe at a little older age than baby boomers did, and so they're kind of in that squeeze frame, whether they consider themselves peanut butter or bologna, or I'm not sure, but they're certainly feeling like they're getting squeezed. And then millennials. Number one for them is the payment of their student loans, where they can have tens of thousands of dollars sitting out there and wondering how long that burden is going to last. And for many of them, it means delaying some of their decisions that earlier generations may have made, like buying a home or getting married or starting a family. Important to them is to be able to live independently, as we have probably anecdotally read. I don't have any statistics on that, but many of them are still living with their parents. It's not unusual for that to occur early in their careers. So again, more than half have less than $1,000 in savings. So how do they want, though, to be communicated with in terms of from their employer? So matures, they like it in writing, but they like it brief, and they're okay going to meetings, because that's sort of that's what they're used to. They're used to being in business and everything's done in a sort of a meeting setting. Baby boomers, they're okay with the phone, but they do like that face-to-face. They like to hear it from someone on a face-to-face basis. It's not surprising to me that email and phone is where Gen Xers come into play. They're not necessarily meeting people, getting together and wanting to sit through a meeting. And the millennials it's not even about the phone. It's about send me something via email, send me a text, and we all have experienced that in some form or another. But they also like the face-to-face. And again, I think that goes back to, if you remember that other slide where we talked about they like information and they go to a variety of different sources, not just all technology-based, but also talking to people about, what would you recommend, why did you choose what you chose, etc. So I thought that would be helpful to you. And this one, we were talking about a little bit about this. This is from Ernst & Young, and about work-life challenges across the generations. And so the millennials, again, I am grateful to them, actually, that's been a real key value for them to have work-life balance. I did find the statistics interesting. Considering the age of the millennials, I would expect them to think that their responsibilities had become more difficult in the past 5 years, because 5 years ago they were probably still in college, would be my guess. That would be my perspective on that. But as we've said before, flexibility is at the top of their list. They like that flexibility, but they don't want it to waylay them from the potential for promotion. They want to be looked at differently when it comes to that. They also, again, because they were probably in college 5 years or less ago, their work hours have increased in the last 5 years. And we were having a little discussion around the last 78%. 78% are dual career couples, compared to 47% of baby boomers. Now, there was no comparison against Gen Xers, but what I found interesting about that is that they probably, based on, again, more anecdotal and some of the other studies I've read, they're probably less likely to have children at this stage. They're delaying that part for financial reasons more often than not. And so it's not unusual for them to expect that they're a dual career couple, and that perhaps they haven't done something along the lines of making some other decisions as perhaps children come into the picture. But did think that was interesting at 78% compared to 47%. And the baby boomers, that percentage could be as low as it is. It could be because they're perhaps more traditional in their families, but it could also be that one member of the baby boomers may already be retired. That's very likely to be the case. So work-life flexibility. This is from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and this looks at different industries and looks at about 6 different areas, from flexibility, telecommuting, child care, job sharing, concierge services, and what different industries are offering. What's highlighted in the pink are those industries that have really have either a very high or very low percentage of certain areas. So when we talk about flexible work schedules, education and nonprofits are more often than not willing to offer that at the highest percentage. Financial services industries are right behind them. The healthcare industry does a lot of job sharing and maybe even concierge level services. Manufacturing is the least likely to offer any of the above. And that's just by nature of their industry, it would be my expectation. Services, reduced hours at 43%. And you could elect more than one option, just so that you know about this. Technology firms, telecommuting, which isn't surprising, offering child care as well too. They're high on that end. And then you see what the overall participants, in terms of those who are offering that flexible work scheduling, as well as the other areas, with about 25% across industry not offering really any of that flexibility out there. So overall, financial services, health and technology firms offer the most work-life flexibility, whereas 38% of manufacturing firms don't offer limited, if any, at all. So this is a little bit of that brainstorming section, but what I did was I took a look at the different categories of what types of things that could be offered that are not insurance related, but other benefits that you can be offering, employers are offering, that again, that we've run into with some of our clients, that we hear about, that you read about, and they're in the categories of employee appreciation, family friendly, organization, professional development, team cohesion, as well as health and well-being. So from employee appreciation, again, these are just some things that I've sort of gathered, collected, and I found them fascinating as well too. Company branded gear, that best parking spot is always a highlight. Lunch with the president or the leader of the organization across generations is always something that I think is very valuable. Most valuable player are rookie awards, but also the MIP is actually most innovative person, which I thought was an interesting take on that. Maybe more traditional approach. Anniversary parties, when they have a big work anniversary, thank God it's Friday, surprise giveaways, that's where maybe you can do the lottery thing. And then also putting an employee spotlight on someone within your organization, something that you might highlight, something unique about them that others might not know, that help to develop that rapport within your organization and give them some recognition as well too. And as we've said before, the millennials like that recognition, but I don't think there's frankly any category of employee who doesn't appreciate recognition and have opportunities at some point. Family friendly, I should highlight snow days. That's cropped up, I know, within our organization. Everybody loves a snow day. Everybody loves a snow day, whether you're going out and building a fort or not. So extra PTO hours, summer hours, early release before a holiday are all different ways to, again, time is money, and regardless of what generation, time is money, and it's a way to reward folks without coming up with additional dollars. House cleaning coupons, college scholarships, depending upon the size of your organization, holiday savings programs. We've heard about bring your daughter to work. But it could be bring your mom to work, bring your dog to work. Does anybody's mother really understand what they do today? I'm not so sure that they do. But you can take different flavors or variations of that. I liked also, read about a firm that provided a new mom or dad welcome back to the office after the baby, after they returned from their baby leave. I thought that was kind of fun. And then renting out a movie theater for employees and their families as well too. Just some of the fun things out there that are not necessarily high cost, but they're certainly high thoughtfulness is how I would describe them. Professional development, and this is important particularly for, I see Generation Xers. It's important for them as well as millennials, and I think it's mutually beneficial because boomers and matures like being called upon to mentor the younger folks and to be able to share what they know and to help them become successful. So that mentorship pairing, I think, is valuable. There's so much education out there on ebooks or audiobooks. Online courses, I highlight Udemy because I heard about it from Seth Godin, and I think there's probably a lot of us who follow Seth Godin's blog at least on a daily basis. He's such a creative, innovative business thinker. I put a question mark behind this next one, the Mistake of the Month Award. So this is the reason why this company was highlighting that is they wanted employees to think outside the box, and they wanted them to try something. Even if it didn't work, it was okay, and they would highlight something they tried that actually didn't work. And it sort of creates that culture of taking a little bit of risk, putting yourself out there on the line, and not being afraid to offer something up that, hey, let's give it a shot and see whether it works or not. No interest loans for home technology is something that some firms are offering. Career pathing, certainly. And then that whole thing around student loan debt reimbursement, whether it's a form of payroll deduction or if there's other mechanisms in place. I know that there's even talk at the national legislative level to be able to free up or to be able to designate some 401k dollars to be used for tuition reimbursement as well too. So there's some things out there that are being even reviewed on a national basis that would provide some tax incentives to help with that tuition reimbursement. Team cohesion, how you get your teams to have empathy, understanding when you've got such diversity within your company, and employee skill sharing. So whether you've got someone who's a woodworker, someone who is knows how to knit, that ability to someone who's a real can help you set up, show you some apps that might be great on your phone. A millennial showing a boomer some apps that would be, this is one of my favorite apps that I think this is why I find it valuable. That type of lunch and learn skill sharing, I think, could be fun. It's a way to meet other people cross-generationally within your organization. Volunteer days or charity of your choice, donation matching. Company Olympics, and this can actually tie in with wellness, sports teams, events tickets, team lunches, whether it's a reward or just the opportunity to get them together, and employee referral incentives, company car wash, where maybe one department washes the cars of another department. I thought that was interesting. And then the Penny Pincher Award, I don't remember the company that was offering this, but the Penny Pincher Award was for that person who basically came up with some ideas for cost savings for the organization. But frankly, I think the way you title it can be as engaging as the actual event or the actual program itself. And so coming up with fun titles, I think, is a part of that. And then health and wellness. We have a number of clients that have community gardens for their employees, and they may use their overflow for the nearest now I'm at a loss for words. That's not like me. For the nearest Food bank? Food bank, yes, exactly. For the nearest food bank. Fresh vegetables for the nearest food bank as well, too, so it sort of does double duty. And we all know, well, I shouldn't say that. For some of us, gardening is very relaxing, and it's a stress reliever. For others, it's not so much. But community gardens, I thought, were interesting. Personal training vouchers, if you don't have access on-site. Personal training vouchers, reimbursements for equipment, on-site tax consulting services during the tax year, I thought was quite interesting. Yoga classes, massage therapy, meditation breaks, again, ways to help reduce some of that stress perhaps in the middle of the workday. Providing healthy breakfast, snack bar options, and then an incentive actually for having your preventive office visits. And actually there are many of the critical illness and accident voluntary plans that are offered by most carriers today will often have an incentive built into that program, which almost helps you pay for the benefit itself. So just some different things there from a health and wellness perspective. So to follow that theme in terms of health and wellness, the different health goals by generation, particularly if you have health and wellness programs that you've had for a while that are evolving, or that you're maybe perhaps just starting up or you need to revitalize. But this was interesting. The millennials, their number one goal is to get more sleep. The older millennials, it's about reducing their stress. Gen Xers want to lose weight, as do baby boomers, so we're in that middle phase where we're shrinking a little bit, and weight loss is a primary for us. And matures, they would just want to be active so they can remain vital as long as possible, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually active as well, too. And this is actually from the American Heart Association, and I just thought that was quite interesting as well, too. Also from the American Heart Association, generations don't experience stress equally. Millennials are most likely to say that they experience the majority of their stress coming from work. And so I thought that was interesting to see there as well, too. So considerations for employers. Every generation say that incentives would be likely, they'd participate more likely in any program if there was an incentive. And Gen Xers are motivated. It doesn't have to be financial. It could be a benefit incentive, extra vacation time, time off during the day to exercise. And so that actually then, that's what the column on the right, or the box on the right, is all about, is to reduce or manage stress, taking time off during the day. And that's where, again, where you see the young millennials, the older millennials, and the Gen Xers, that would be something that would be valuable to them if you have that option. If you're a company that's large enough to have a walking path near or surrounding your location, that's a great opportunity, a great thing for those younger generations as well, too. And then again, from the American Heart Association, who always has great information out there, the things across the spectrum that matter to employees. Financial health is important to them overall. Unplugging from technology is important to employees, and that's something to really encourage through just conversation and culturally, a cultural expectation. I think we've unfortunately, many organizations have reached a point where they sort of half expect their employees to be plugged in 24/7, and that is not helpful from a stress management and overall health and well-being perspective. So that whole unplugging and how you convey that message is important. And then that also mentorship certainly impacts engagement at both ends for those who are being mentored as well as those who are actually doing the mentoring. A little bit about, this is sort of an evolving, and there are a number of vendors out there, employee discounts specific that are branded to your organization, availability for discounts, as well as concierge level services, which are sort of the next step up. So employee discounts with a card and a site that's branded to your organization where they get very specific discounts in their specific location for restaurants, shopping, travel, entertainment, and then concierge level services that help with the travel planning and a personal assistant for gift wrapping and flowers and gifts, car wash, and whatever. Those can be offered on a very minimal per employee per month expense, and it's certainly something that we see evolving out there as well too. I'll tell you, within our organization, it's been several years since we did this. We used to bring in a college intern, and I need to probably do this again. We used to bring in a college intern and do Christmas wrapping for all of our employees, and they bring in all their kids' toys and they have them wrapped and they take them home in their car. So minimal expense. It gave the college intern something to do over the holidays. And so, again, something that great value, simplifies an employee's life, and minimal cost to the employer as well too. So basically, overall, it's about taking a cross-generational approach, whether it's health, money, family, between the boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials. Business Solver is another one of the sources, and how they view things. Regarding money, that financial wellness counseling, consulting, whether it's about retirement planning, 401k contributions, it's about managing debt, and that's certainly something that has a slightly different flavor depending upon the generation, but certainly important at all levels there. And then again, from a health perspective, as we've talked about as well too. Millennials most likely to be those who want outcomes-based wellness programs because they're probably the most likely to achieve the goals than perhaps maybe the older generation might be. So in my perspective, I think in terms of, hopefully this has been valuable to you, but when I think about what's next, and I realize I have a typo up there, what's next? I think it's important for organizations to give themselves credit for what you're already doing. You may have something innovative that you're already doing that we haven't talked about today, and we'd love to hear back from you about something that you've done that you found successful, that has been valuable for your organization. Of those 5 key areas that we were talking about, check for any holes that you might have there. It isn't one size fits all. And it's going to be different from industry to industry, as we saw, and it's going to be different depending upon the demographic makeup of your specific organization. But I think for all of us, no matter what industry, no matter the size of our company, is that we need to build that understanding of generational value between the generations and how we can help to facilitate that communication in ways that's going to forge a strong company culture and community within your company. And then ultimately, you need to honor your own company's benefit philosophy. Every organization has a philosophy around benefits, whether they're insurance or whether they're non-insurance related, and how you want to position yourself in terms of your the perspective of your organization in the marketplace, as well as for those that you're looking to attract and retain as well too. And I think that's my last slide. Yeah.
Awesome. Christy, thank you. You always bring new ideas. I know I was scribbling away as you were talking about some ideas. So let me bring this home for us with the last few minutes we've got, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So when we talk about translating everything we just heard and learned, and hopefully it's giving you some things to think about, we want to tie that to your employer value proposition, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be most important, is how do you take these things back to action in your business to make them authentically yours. A couple of years ago, Novo had commissioned a study, and we did this with the National Center of the Middle Market, Ohio State University, and then GE Capital Group, to do some research about those differentiators in the marketplace that really raised employer value to the employee population as well as attracting talent. And we specifically focused on this middle market area, which is broadly defined as organizations that have revenues approximately in about the 50 million mark all the way up to a little bit over $1 billion. So middle market is a broad group, but when I look at the attendees for today's session, there's definitely a number of you, the vast majority, that would fall into this category. And what we found is those organizations that have a strong employer value proposition substantially outperform their peer group. And in order to support an employer value proposition, you need to create a definition of it, of what's important. So just to underscore that, workplace brand is a little different than the employer value proposition. The employer value proposition is really what we call that unique employment deal. It's the what do I get out of my relationship with you as my employer that's uniquely a relationship between you and me that I can't get with another employer. So that's why we wanted to share today on some of these insurance concepts and benefits, is to think really outside the box, because some organizations check the box on insurance, medical, dental, vision, but what else do you have that you can offer that's even a low-cost consideration? Things like the employee experience of everyday rewards and growth and culture, all the things that Christy shared. The study still found out of 400 responding organizations that that's very important. So much so that there are some components here of what do candidates find compelling and attractive as the part of the employer value proposition. And obviously, if you look at the largest area, there's necessary in blue and very attractive in orange. Look at culture. Culture above all of the different categories is important, and subsets of culture are also your benefits programs and your work environment programs, so some things that will be uniquely yours. And in working with a lot of different organizations, Novo often sees these things at work. We see things that fit certain cultures and that wouldn't fit in others, so they do need to be authentically yours. But when you look at culture and meaningfulness of work, this is all about that connection to the employer. And then benefits as a package as a whole, number 3 on this list, is still exceptionally important because those are the must-haves. So some of the places that you can go, if you're really going to try to capture your employer value proposition, you've got some data probably already in-house that you can navigate. And you can pull what's important to your employees. You've got engagement and pulse surveys. Look at the mentions of your company on the internet and social media. Look at your social listening skills. Look at exit interviews. What are employees saying as they leave your organization that they would have liked to see different? But even more importantly, I'll underscore stay interviews. Why do key people stay? What keeps them there? It's a connection to the organization. Stay interviews are very proactive. Or find out from candidates. If you're not surveying candidates who have turned down job offers or declined to interview further, why is that? Are you really seeking to understand? You might be surprised what translates back to even your benefits program. Asking new hire surveys about their experience. Interview competitors' employees. What's the word on the street from your sales team? Your sales force has a lot of information about how your organization is perceived on the street. And interview your people in person about benefits and what's important. You know, surveys do have their place and have their information and provide data, but studies show that conversation will get you richer and more candid information because a person will really believe you're going to do something more with it than if they just check a box or fill in a bubble on a survey. And then step back and evaluate the way you are different from competition, and then exploit it, capitalize on it. So just in summary, some key learnings we hope you walked away with is that benefits are definitely broader than insurance. We can think about it differently. Understand your workforce, what their differences are, and how to build a benefits platform that meets their needs, especially in light of these different stages of career, which is a really unique way to look at it. And then ultimately, when you look at the spend, because at the end of the day, cost is a very key component to all of these decisions for employers, decide where to allocate those based on where your workforce needs you to be. You do have the access and the ability to get that information. So with that said, again, thank you so much for joining us. Christy, thank you so much for the work that you did in preparing for this. Always a joy to work with you. We will take some Q&A at this point, so let me see what questions that may have come out. So one question that I'd like us to talk a little bit about is, where are some of the sources for competitive data to find out benchmarking of local benefits information? Because competitors tend to hold that dear. Where are some ideas of places that information can be gathered to find out what other companies in similar industries are doing?
Actually, I would have to give credit to MRA, where they do a variety of different surveys in this area. And they're specific to Wisconsin, although they are in a few other states as well too, but I've always found that their surveys can be valuable. I did want to mention though, before I forget, that we posted a little video clip out on LinkedIn that is from actually the New York Times, and it lasts about 2.5 minutes, but it's around generational differences and the value to be seen from that as well too. So there's also the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Services is another organization. There is also, and they do a lot of, they do some surveying and they also collect information. And I would say that I don't know that they do much surveying per se, but the Greater Milwaukee Employee Benefits Council would also be potentially another source as well too.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christy. This one pertains a little bit more to work-life balance and talking a little bit more about how to tackle that in an organization where work schedules tend to be a little bit more, we'll call it structured or rigid, because there may be shifts, there may be certain work efforts that have to be done at certain times. And work-life balance or flexibility it does have a challenge in those environments. Some of the ways that that can be offset and some of the ways that we've seen organizations tackle that one could be, it's maybe not that there's flexibility in a single day schedule, but perhaps there's extra PTO days or community giving days, paid time off to be able to go do volunteerism, or some flex scheduling or compressed work weeks that also can help in those situations. It's not always about people being able to, show up at 9 in the morning instead of 7 with the rest of their shift. Sometimes it's really just about knowing that when they need that extra time, that it's available. We find that when people are really talking about work-life balance, they're really talking about work-life integration and how to balance those things that pop up in their schedule. Child care issues. The sandwich generations, as Christy talked about, also now have elder care challenges, and how can there be some employer flexibility when those emergencies arise without that necessarily becoming a penalty in some sort of kind of attendance environment or attendance culture. Looking at ways to make that a more humility-based program is really an important one so that employees feel comfortable. I can speak from personal experience as CHRO and now here at Novo and other organizations. We've instituted for some of our workforce a non-accrual PTO program. Our employees have an unlimited PTO program. And in the studies of doing that in one organization that had over 5,000 employees, people actually took less structured time off because they didn't feel they were working against a bank of time, and instead provided more flexibility. So if they needed to leave for, Joey's soccer game at 3 o'clock on Thursday, studies showed instead of taking actual PTO time, they were more likely in that situation to hop back online to finish work at the end of the day to round it out instead of actually losing the work hours. So it's a productivity opportunity. Good questions. Well, it looks like that that has concluded the question component. One last piece that I want to share is that we do have 2 more webinars in this 4-part series. We hope that you can join us for those in September. You can log on to the novogroup.com and enroll in those as well. We're going to continue the focus on candidate engagement and candidate experience and things that you can do to win this war on talent. So thanks for your hour today. We really appreciate it. Have a happy rest of your week and have a great weekend. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.